So this is the wife's 2014 Kia Soul. It's the base model. And for some reason she likes the car, so I got to keep it going. Recently had to do a front wheel bearing on it. It's a front wheel drive car, which means in order to replace the wheel bearing, there's a drive axle that goes through it. So you have to remove a lot of things. I found that there were 3 ways of doing this. And like all of you, I guess since I knew I was going to be doing it, I watched every YouTube video I could on it, watched all the guys doing it. And most of the guys that were making it look really simple all had the cars up on lifts, which should have been a warning sign to me that they're professional automotive guys, because I don't got a lift. I've got dirt, and I got this thin strip of concrete, and then more dirt. But long story short, the 2 ways, if you're going to do it yourself, this part here is the whole front wheel assembly. This is the bearing right in here. So in order to get that bearing out so that you can go further, obviously you take the wheel off, you take the brake disc off, you pull the brake rotor off, then you're down to this piece, which is attached to the car, and you got to get the axle out of the way. Well, you can't pull the axle out because there's a universal joint, front wheel drive, and it's on the back side. You have to push the axle in, you have to tip this out. In order to tip this whole assembly out, this is what ties up under your McPherson struts, and there are 2 bolts that go through from the strut that clamp onto that part. And if I remember right, they were like number 17 millimeter or something like that. But you can't get those off using normal sockets. I don't care whether you use a Craftsman like I did, or whether you use a cheap one from Harbor Freight like I also did, because by the time you put the long arm bar on there and the piece of pipe on that, because they're torqued, and you move it down, it just strips those chrome plated sockets completely round. So I ended up having to get hold of the black case hardened sockets, meant for air guns, impact air pneumatic tools, if you will, and bust them off that way. So once you get that off, that allows you to tip this a little bit, but not quite enough to still get the axle pulled back out of the way. You still have the tie rod for the steering, which has a universal ball on it here, and you got to get that off. And when you watch all the videos of the guys doing it, they say, yeah, just take the nut off and spray some PB loosener down in there, and then you just tap it here on the sides and here, and it'll just drop out. No, it's not going to drop. I don't care how much loosener you put in there and how hard you hit that. It's not going anywhere. At least not on this factory one, which there's no real rust. There's just some dirt. So I ended up having to torch this part, trying not to melt the boot and everything on the little bearing that goes back on the steering on the tie rod. And once you get that warm, then you can tap on the end and pop that free. Now at that point, I guess if you were just going to replace the bearing, you could probably get enough play to have moved this whole thing to push the axle back out of the way. But then you've got to buy or rent the bearing puller, which is a device that goes in and slams out and pulls the bearing out. First you got to remove a keeper ring that's here, so you need the tool for that. And then if you get the bearing out, you got to get the bearing press, a special tool for pressing the new bearing back in place, and then put the keeper ring on and reverse that. So I decided with all that much work that I would just buy this. You can get this whole unit that you see here as one piece. And to buy the pullers and the presses and the keeper rings and $50 for the bearing would have been a little bit over $250. Whereas this whole piece here shipped was $250. So I figured it'd be easier just to replace that, because then I'm not doing any of the pulling work and the keepers and the pressers. It's all there. All I have to do is get those bolts out, which I'd have to do anyway, get that off, which I would have to do anyway, and the only thing that would be new is where the connects to the bottom part of the steering support. There's a bearing knuckle there through. Got to get that one off. That bolt came off easy. Again, it was a little bit of work getting it off of there, but nice about this one, you have a slit So I was able to go in there and pound a wedge and spread it to where it finally came off and put it in. So why am I telling all this? Because there's 3 ways of doing it. One, if you're doing it yourself, you can pull the bearing and replace it through all the steps I just told you about, or you can just replace the whole thing as one piece for the same amount of money and less work. Or if you've got the money, you pay somebody to do it for you, because it's not an easy job. Now, of course, if you're talking a rear wheel bearing, that's a simple job. You take the tire off, you get the disc brake calipers out of the way, you pull the disc brake rotor off. Now you're down to 4 bolts. You take the 4 bolts, you pull the whole bearing assembly off, bolt the new one in, put it back together, and you're out of there. Probably a little under a 1-hour job, even for an old man like me. But this is kind of a pain in the ass.